Hi, everybody. My name is Pierre Roberge, as you mentioned already. I am the CEO of Arcadia. This talk is not about Arcadia. This is a Bitcoin talk, and it's because of personal interests of mine into Bitcoin. My field of expertise is hacking into systems and defending them. I have a background in cryptography in general, which turns all of this into something very interesting. So today I want to talk about the Bitcoin attack surface and outlining maybe what people don't expect or don't know that could be a risk to Bitcoin or blockchains in general as attack vectors or problem that we can encounter with such technology. And there's a slide changer, sorry. There you go. Here are some interesting quotes from the inventor of Bitcoin. Governments are good at cutting off the heads of centrally controlled networks like Napster. Everybody remember Napster? As you know, the free music centralized website, yeah? But peer-to-peer networks like Nutella and Tor seems to be holding their own. And these still are in general, except people have been taking down the centralized source of torrents in general. But the networks themselves have been holding up for years and years. So this was a source of inspiration to Satoshi that we can base on to understand where Bitcoins come from. The other one, we have proposed a system for electronic transaction without relying on trust. I think what he means, that Bitcoin has built a trust and trust in the Bitcoin system, right? So those I thought were two very interesting quotes before starting. Before I get into the attack surface, by the way, this is the attack surface of, or the hacker's perspective on how to hack into a car. So this is to help people understand what attack surface means. For a hacker to hack into a car, he sees that all of those systems and he thinks they're running code. Code can be hacked. So those are all possibilities to hack into a system such as a car. So understanding what is attack surface, what is the attack surface of Bitcoin in general? And I was sitting thinking about what I would talk here today, and it has to be something about security, and then we came out with a title, and then I ended up asking myself the question, what is the attack surface of Bitcoin? I believe there are two attack vectors to Bitcoin. Is one, people might want to dismantle it or have it disappear from its existence, so that would be a social attack. And there would be technical attacks like stealing Bitcoins, for example, to the system. So let's talk first about the social attack angle. Here's a $20 from the US Department, and it's old a little bit. There's something special about it. And for those who don't know, and I did not know that until recently, please play the animation. That little text here says, redeemable in gold on demand at the United States Treasury or in gold or lawful money at any federal bank reserves. The initial value for the exchange was 1 ounce, if I'm correct. Please correct me, but when it was initially created, they forced people to exchange their 1 ounce of gold for $20. Right? So that was the original $20 from the Federal Reserve of the United States. Now, interesting fact today, if you show up and you ask for your ounce of gold at a Federal Reserve or a bank, I don't think it will happen. Actually, it was removed and regulations came into place to change all of this. And an ounce of gold goes for what nowadays? Who knows? And 1,200? I guess, John, you must know that.
But if you turn in your 20, you will get 2 tenths.
That's about right. So you're not going to get your 1 ounce of gold. Between you and me, I would rather have the ounce of gold. So I believe we can qualify the United States Federal Reserve as an attack on the US monetary system in general. So that would be a social attack on the system. And we can make a parallel or I will try to make a parallel to the Bitcoin network. Who knows who is Elon Musk? Quite a lot of people. For those who don't know, he's CEO and founder of Tesla, SpaceX, and you said Holotube, like with his Hyperloop, with his idea of hypertransport. What motivates Elon Musk, and he says that quite often in presentation, he would like human species to be a multi-planetary race. And I find, well, that's a hell of a dream. And you know what, let's jump in it. And thinking about it, he said, well, we need to fix things first, right? The electric car for him is, and I believe it is genuine, is he wants to save the planets from emission, and to scale and be able to go to the other planets. So my motivation in Bitcoins are, I believe this is good for humanity. So this is why I decided to work and give some of my personal time on it. That being said, my field of expertise is really technical, so I will jump into the other slides. And anybody knows who that animal is? This is yeah, a few people. This is a pangolin, and this is lions exploring their attack surface of pangolin. I really find that Bitcoin's the same thing. You know, a whole lot of people out there looking at Bitcoins. What is Bitcoin? How do I eat it? How do I steal it? So actually, this is how I felt at first about it. To understand Bitcoin, we need to understand many of the concepts, and I know there are very technical people here, but there are other people that are not as technical, and I would like to share some of the basics first quickly, and then we can explore their attack vectors. The Bitcoin works, or the blockchains will work with public key, private key. And a lot of people, like, it's really hard to grab what is a public key. To me, a public key can be an analogy, a good analogy would be a post mailbox. So you can tell everybody that, you know, number 53 in this village at this place is your post mailbox. So your public key is what you can share about Bitcoin that is not dangerous. You can share this information with whomever you want about Bitcoin. So they can send you Bitcoins, right? Because you want to receive Bitcoins like a mailbox. You send it in a mail there. That letter will end up there. Funny thing, a thought there. In a few years, we will not be able to explain this to the young people because they don't receive letters anymore, except maybe some bills and things like that. So I'll need to find a new one. But I think it still holds. The other side of it is the private key, which you can make the analogy that it is the key to open the mailbox. This key allows us to take the mail out or the money out and give it to someone else. And this key is hard, especially if you don't show it, keep it to yourself. It would be very hard for someone else to come up with the same key. In the world of Bitcoin, how hard that is. How hard that is. It's actually very hard. And I'll skip to this one first. The number of private keys is almost the same as the estimated number of atoms in the universe. There are like technicalities like this. About 75% of atoms are considered, or probably hydrogen and things like that. But it gives you an idea. There are about 10 to the 80th, that's a lot of 80 zeros, atoms in the universe. A Bitcoin private key is 256 bit. Which gives 2 to the 256, so 10 to the 77th. So we're talking about the same order of magnitudes. If you want to move someone's Bitcoin, you need that key, and that key has the same number of possibilities as the atoms in the universe. So it gives you an idea that even with the most powerful supercomputer, which nowadays is the Bitcoin supercomputer, and I forget, like gigahash, terahash, petahash, and now we're in the exahash. It would take billions of years to go through the entire space of the Bitcoin space. Okay, so brute forcing Bitcoin is non-practical. It stands behind very solid cryptography. It's been proven. A lot of people have a lot of money, at least in value, in Bitcoin assets. So this could be an attack vector, but I believe is very unlikely. In the same order of ideas, there is another type of attacks against the private keys, which is mathematical and slash timing attack. What is this? This is what intelligence agencies pays PhD mathematicians for. They put them in the room and they say, please figure out how to lower the number of possibilities I need to crack on to be able to figure out what is the private key, because I want to read someone else's communication. It is exactly the same thing, but now it is for Bitcoin. So how could we change the universe and make it as big as just the room here in number of atoms, so that we can try to all the possibilities and find this secret key and be able to move those Bitcoins? Okay. This works like in this example. This was actually the recipient. So that address here was the address that a guy was sending Bitcoins he stole from some Android Bitcoin wallet implementation back in 2013. He successfully stole 59 Bitcoins. How he did that is he took the universe and he made it very, very small. And the reason it was small is because the Bitcoin wallet had a bug in the implementation. The guy who implemented it was not generating a good private keys. So the mathematicians, or the coder in this case, it was a very straightforward attack, was able to determine what is the private key to move those funds. So after that, the only thing he needed to do was find those public keys that had those private keys. So he scanned the blockchain and he found them and was able to transfer them. This bug was patched really quickly, and I believe most of the people got their Bitcoin back or something like that. But anyway, a successful attack against the private key space of Bitcoin. This is to outline the importance of good code and the Bitcoin wallets or the blockchains as to generating a real random block keys. As you can imagine, this is actually a challenge for any implementation of encryption. It's very hard to, it's not very hard, but it is hard to prove that your private keys are different enough and that you cannot speculate their values. So this is one attack vector against the Bitcoins. And next, we have the transaction level. In the Bitcoin network, I would describe that as the Bitcoin network. So Tetris is like, to me, well, blockchain is like a Tetris. It's the same thing, and every piece is a transaction and just piled on top of each other. One would think in the attack surface that maybe we can alter the position of the Tetris in there, which would be equivalent to the transactions. This again goes the same cryptography is protecting it. It's the miners protecting against this, and I believe this attack surface is almost zero at the moment. It's been proven to work for years and years and years, both in the peer-to-peer networks, the decentralization, the fact that there are 6,000 nodes out there keeping the same copy of the Tetris pile there, and that verifies against what the miners have verified over and over again. If there would be to be a problem at some point, it would be just at the top, and we could revert on a few pieces that have been misplaced. This would go into what we call the little forks or the orphines in the blockchain. Sometimes it happens that two miners find relatively at the same time the transaction solution, and then one person actually doesn't get the Bitcoin because they're orphans. I'm sorry, I got way too technical. But there's no, I don't think there's any way to break this, but it could be a vector of attack. Someone could find a way to disrupt this. It could it could make Bitcoin or blockchains unworkable, but it is accepted that it's not feasible. One could go after the miners. So one of the concern, I think, in the community, is how I would put it, is that there's a bit or a certain level of Bitcoin centralization, miners centralization. The miners out there are the ones racing to find a solution for the next 10 minutes, the next transaction, the next Bitcoin, sorry, every 10 minutes. Those people are investing a lot of money into their Bitcoin farm, or the farming of the Bitcoins. There's a bit of centralization, but I think it's still quite decentralized in general, but it is something that has to stay like this. And John was sharing with me that some ideas are coming out shortly to help in keeping it this way. The analogy in the question I was asking earlier is how a private blockchain will secure the transaction. Here what we have is competing miners against each other. So we have a majority in China, we have a lot in the United States, and quite a bit. There's Bitfury is running a whole lot of them, I think, in Europe and other places. How can a private blockchain secure the transaction as secure as the Bitcoin network? Because at the moment, the Bitcoin network is the one with the highest security available for the transactions. There are ideas on how could you attack this. I don't know, but it could be an attack vector, right? It could be to centralize the miners, which would be the same as a private blockchain, where essentially a human takes the decision instead of the machines and the distributed network. This is the current distribution of the pool of miners. There's something that's happening on the Bitcoin miners field, is that the miners are getting together to race for the blocks, and this has been ongoing since quite a long time, actually, early on, because it was too hard to win one block. So people every 10 minutes win 25 Bitcoins. In this case, it goes to the miner. So if you have the pool, the miner pool. So if you take Bitfury, and I don't know when I took that, it's just last week or something, Bitfury has about 10% of the hash rate, the Bitcoin global hash rate. So every 10 minutes, Bitfury has 10% of chances of earning the 25 new Bitcoins, okay? So one attack vector could be to, in a social way, would be to take over the control of the pools and maybe apply some attacks, like if someone gets 51% of the mining power. So if someone gets 51% of the mining power, or more, actually he needs more, he can decide as to who gets the Bitcoin or what transactions are validated, and then he can start double spending money. So he can take your 25 Bitcoin, spend them once, and then another time, and then the other two persons here think they have it, but then one of the two doesn't. This is not really practically possible because those miners invest so much money into earning those Bitcoins. There's no economic incentives in doing such an attack, but it was one of the early attack vector that people feared. So the economic incentive here on the Bitcoin network is what is holding it all together. So the question circles back is, when you have a private blockchain, how can you assure that this double spending is not happening? And it's been the problem since the early days of computer science and why digital money did not exist. I have solution, I have ideas. I think they need to peg or to color some Bitcoins and use the Bitcoin blockchain to run their blockchain as a side chain. But those are ideas for the future. I just want to outline it was an attack vector early on. This is the current distribution of Bitcoin nodes out there. And let's zoom in a bit. We have classic, Satoshi, and different versions and different numbers. What does this represent, and why I bring this up is because all of those different clients are actually running essentially 99.9% of the same code. And one of the attack vector that is not well known, and it's the hacking one, comes from this effect. So let's say you build clones like in Star Wars. They're all the same. Like the Pagolin we saw, they're all the same or relatively the same. All those 6,000 nodes that John was showing us earlier, they're all running 99% of the same code. And then you add the altcoins who copied the code from Bitcoin Core, and you then add the private blockchain running essentially a whole lot of the same core code. That brings a whole lot of incentives to a hacker to look into this code and find problems with it. And this can yield to two things. Either someone finds good hacks against all of those nodes possible to run a social agenda or a political agenda, or what I believe we've seen more and has been an underestimated attack vector is to hack in an exchange platform using the Bitcoin node itself to essentially at some point get to the private key of the wallet as the first stage of the attack. Another concern would be a worm style of attack. You can play the video, please. So we're gonna, I had this video made where this represents the Bitcoin nodes, and then someone finds the hacks, and we agree they're all running relatively the same code. If they're running the same code, well, in theory, you can take over all of them, or almost all of them. So you can hack all the nodes at the same time. So it's a threat that the Bitcoin network is under. What would it result in? I don't think a hacker would do that. Okay, why? Because there's no economic incentive. What this would do, he could only disrupt the functionality of the Bitcoin network for a certain period of time. But if you use it on one node, then he can maybe get its way to a private key and steal the Bitcoins. Okay. That was just me doing some research to hack in this code. And I ran some coverage code that here we can have the output in the network library, and a lot of the code is also in the main library of Bitcoin Core. About 50% of the code is not automatically tested. It is tested on a test net after. With this, as a hacker, we look at what is not automatically tested typically to find the first problems. So those are two big bobos in the Bitcoin Core, which I hope to have time to help as to limit the number of hacking vectors in the Bitcoin Core nodes. So that was my presentation. There's 2 minutes left.